Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's live event. I am Natasha Levy, and thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are going to be having a great conversation about the new Jamaica Data Protection Act short course being offered by Symptai Consulting. With me today, we have Andre Palmer, and Andre is the Director of Research and Engagement here at Symptai Consulting. Welcome, Andre. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Natasha. It's a pleasure being here with all of you. And I'm actually very excited to be talking about the Jamaica Data Protection Act today. I'm doing well.
Awesome. Now listen, what I want us to do is I want us to kind of break things down first before we kind of jump into the short course. So help me to set the context. Andre, what is this Jamaica Data Protection Act?
So the Jamaica Data Protection Act is a piece of legislation that governs how personal and sensitive information is collected, stored, processed, shared, and ultimately deleted. The act was passed in 2020 after a number of years of deliberations, and probably to go a step before that, with the passage of the General Data Protection Regulations, we saw a number of countries around the world taking steps to develop local legislations that mimicked very closely the GDPR. So within the Jamaica Data Protection Act, there are provisions that govern how you as a data subject, how your information is treated, which is actually very important. And it talks about the responsibilities that these organizations have just in terms of ensuring that your rights are protected. The act was passed in 2020, as I said, and an information commissioner, Celia Barclay, was appointed in December of 2021. And with that came a 2-year transition period. So organizations now have an opportunity to put in place the requisite components to ensure that come November of 2023, they are in compliance with the Jamaica Data Protection Act.
Got it. I see. So that's the genesis. That's where everything is going to start from. So it seems like a very big piece of legislation, Andre. I would love to understand, why is the act important to Jamaicans and why is the act important to businesses?
So essentially, the act provides a guidance framework to help organizations decide the what, the why, the who, the how. What bits of information are being collected, and why? Why is this information necessary? I'm sure that you've gone into establishments and they've asked you for your mother's maiden name. They've asked you for the last 6 months' bank statements. They've asked you for your address. They've asked you for your date of birth. And sometimes you may be thinking, well, actually, why is this necessary or needed? So it helps organizations to decide first what information is being collected and why this information is actually necessary. It then helps organizations to decide who has access to that information and where the information is stored. Helps them to decide how long they retain that information, and helps them to also decide how the information is shared. So this now forces organizations to be a little bit more deliberate and a little bit more intentional when it comes to the collection and processing of data, so that they can do so in a way that is not in contravention of the rights of data subjects.
So I'm listening to all of what you've said, and one of the things that I'm hearing that I think people might want to know is, what are some of the challenges that people and businesses are facing right now with the act? Like, are people having challenges understanding, how the act applies to them?
Certainly. And that's a very good question. So we've been talking with a number of organizations, and in fact, Symptai Consulting has been working in the data privacy space since before the passage of the Jamaica Data Protection Act. And in many of our conversations, what our clients say to us primarily is, well, I don't really know what the act says. What is this act really about? So the first challenge we're seeing is one of a knowledge gap. People not really knowing in layman's terms, what the act says. I mean, of course, it is an act of parliament, and with a lot of these legal instruments, they are crafted in legalese. So when you find organizations reading the act and trying to interpret how these, the different clauses relate to their organizations, it might be a bit of a challenge. So the first hurdle that a lot of organizations will have to overcome is that knowledge gap. The second challenge is really around this question of how do I, as an organization, create, implement, and manage a data privacy framework that allows me to ensure that I am not in contravention of any of the clauses within the act. How do I create and implement that in a way that works for the organization? So that is the second hurdle. And the third hurdle I'd say is organization, again, because it is such a daunting, or it seems like such a daunting compliance piece. The question then becomes, where do I begin? So first, I don't know what I don't know, so the knowledge component. And the
Yes.
second component is, how do I create a framework that allows me to do this thing well? And then the third question is, well, actually, where do I begin?
Where do I begin?
Yeah, so those are the three main challenges I'd say organizations are facing.
So I know you must get this question a lot, and certainly in your conversations, I'm guessing that people are. Do you find that people are thinking that it's just a compliance related issue?
Certainly, certainly. So people say it, and let's be frank, a
Right.
large part of it really is compliance related.
Right.
For a long time, there have been a number of high-profile cases where
Right.
personal information is mistreated, sensitive information is made public through sometimes no fault of the organization. I mean, there are a number of external actors with bad intent. So there had to be some mechanism that's put in place to force organizations to think critically about protecting people's personal information and people's sensitive information. So with that, there is a huge compliance element that is attached. But beyond just the compliance piece, there is obviously a huge benefit to the organization. Because if an
Okay.
organization can get the data components right, one, it means that you're now only collecting and processing information that you need to conduct your business. Sometimes we see organizations with vast volumes of data to the point that they don't know where to begin. So again, it
Ah,
helps organizations to become a little bit more intentional on the data collection side. And then another benefit I would say is it forces organizations to process information in a way that is meaningful to both them and to the clients that they serve. So organization doing the background data analytics and doing all of the intentional work allows for more targeted engagements around specific aspects of the services that they deliver to clients. So yes, while it is a huge compliance effort, there are also added benefits to the organizations as well.
so I want to pick up on something that you said just a few moments ago, and I liked that analogy. You don't know what you don't know. And before I jump a little bit more into that and the course, you mentioned that there are fines associated with non-compliance. I wonder if you could sort of just paint the framework of what that would look like, just to drive home the importance of really understanding what the impact of the Jamaica Data Protection Act.
So unfortunately, we've seen in a number of instances that you'll have these acts of parliament. They come out and there's a huge push initially to get people compliant, but then after a while, it just feels like a toothless dog. It's
Right.
all bark and no bite. But through the Office of the Information Commissioner, which actually has broad powers, there are now fines in place for non-compliance. So organizations can be fined upwards of $5 million, $2 million in some cases, 4% of global annual turnover in the previous
Okay.
financial year. There are prison terms also associated with non-compliance for accountable officers within the organizations as well. And I think this was important because it signals to organizations both in the public and the private sector that issues of non-compliance will be dealt with swiftly and will actually, be very severe. So that's on the one side. And organizations may say, well, if I pay $4 million, or if I pay $5 million, or 4% of my, annual global annual turnover, then I won't necessarily go bankrupt. But
Right.
again, think about on the other side, think about the reputational damage that your organization could face in the event of a data breach or a data leak. Again, we've seen in the papers, we've seen on the news in recent times where organizations have suffered, data breaches, and we've seen just the result around the brand reputation that they now have to
Yes.
contend with.
Very much so. There is a time frame involved, isn't there, Andre? I mean, the Act came into being in 2020, but there's something significant happening this year in November. Am I correct?
That is correct. So, come November of this year, we will see the end of the 2-year transition period. So remember, I said when the Information Commissioner was appointed, that signaled a 2-year implementation or 2-year transition period. And during this time, organizations have an opportunity to get their houses in order, for want of a better expression, to put the things in place, to get their staff members trained, to ensure that they've done the audit around what data they've collected, where the data resides, who has access to it, just to ensure that they're in full compliance. And come November 30 of this year, organizations will need to register with the Office of the Information Commissioner, at which point the Act becomes fully implemented. So there is actually now a very tight window. And in fact, a lot of organizations that we've spoken with have said, well, I haven't started anything yet, and I feel like I am coming from so far behind. And if you are in that position today, if you're listening and you're an organization in that position today, you are not alone. In fact, the vast number of people that we talk to are actually in that position. But the good news is you still have some time to ensure that your staff get trained, they are sensitized around the components of the Act, they understand what the rights of the data subjects are, they understand the responsibilities of the organizations as custodians of these bits of data, and understand the processing standards as well as the fines that are attached with non-compliance as well.
So, Andre, you've said quite a lot of things so far, and I want to really bring it home for those who are watching us today. I want to focus on that piece around you don't know what you don't know, and that how can you close that knowledge gap, and that's where this new Jamaica Data Protection Act short course comes into play, right? Now, you're going to tell us a little bit more about it, but I'm going to preempt what you're saying, because if I'm not mistaken, Andre, it's not only is it new, but it's the first of its kind in Jamaica, correct?
Correct. You're absolutely correct. So Symptai Consulting, we've been doing data privacy training for about 4 years. But before this point, we've been offering certified data privacy courses. We've partnered with the International Association of Privacy Professionals, which is the world's largest body of privacy professionals, and they offer accredited training courses. But we saw an opportunity to develop and take to market a data privacy course that was geared specifically around the Jamaica Data Protection Act. We started the development of the material a little bit under a year ago. And the material has been developed by data privacy professionals here at Symptai Consulting and validated by data privacy professionals and practitioners outside of the organization. In essence, it is a constituent components, the salient points of the Jamaica Data Protection Act. So it starts with giving an overview of the Act in layman's terms, really getting people to understand what the Act says and why something like this is actually important. It then moves into the rights of the data subject. It talks about the 6 rights of the data subjects and kind of go into a little bit more detail so that you can really understand why these rights are important. Then it talks about the responsibilities of the organizations, because as you know, with rights comes responsibilities. So it talks a little bit about some of those responsibilities. And then finally, it looks at the processing standards, the circumstances under which personal and sensitive information can be processed and how the information should be processed. So it's quite a comprehensive course, but in fact, it is crunched into maybe 2.5 hours. So if you decide to do the course in one go, you can actually complete it in 2.5 hours, under 3 hours. But if you are a learner like me and you want to break it down into bite-sized chunks, then you have an opportunity to do so too. And then you can do that over a period of days or weeks or months, however you choose to learn. And in fact, you can always go back to it because again, it's e-learning, right? It's on demand, it's e-learning. And you can do it from the convenience of a laptop, from a tablet, from a mobile phone, on the go, when you're sitting under a tree having your lunch, just before you go to bed at night, when you wake up first thing in the morning. So however you decide to consume.
However you decide. Got
right.
you.
So to make it convenient, but also really informative, and obviously the on-demand component.
Got you. So it's about 5 modules we're looking at. So we're looking at 5 modules. We're looking at it being self-paced. We're looking at anywhere, anytime learning. We're looking at it being online. So this really is sounding like something that, could help persons and companies. I forgot to ask you, Andre, who is this geared at? Is it geared at, somebody like me? Or is it, for organizations, or are we looking at people who are in the, the legal department at companies? Who is it really geared at?
Yes, excellent question, Natasha. So unlike the certified privacy courses that we offer, certified information privacy manager, certified information privacy technologist, and certified information privacy professional that may be geared at specific practitioners within the organization, this JDPA short course is literally for everybody. So one of the big things that we recognized, and a gap that we saw in talking with organizations and in talking with data privacy practitioners, there is this misconception that the data collection or the data processing only resides with a few people within the organization. But when you think about how data flows throughout an organization, you may have one set of people collecting personal information, people's names, their date of birth, their TRN number, their banking information, their address, all that stuff. Then that gets passed on to another department for processing, and then somebody else may need to tap into that data in order to deliver a service to a client. Then somebody else files that in a particular application or in a filing cabinet because the law talks about data, however stored. So both digital data as well as physical data. And then ultimately somebody prints that off and passes it on to somebody else. And then somebody, puts it in an envelope and mails it to somebody else. And somebody opens it and reads it and then puts it in the bin. So when you think about the way that data flows through the organization, you realize that almost every single person within an organization at some point or another will come in contact with personally identifiable information and in some cases, sensitive information. So because of that reason, we thought it was important to develop a course that was targeted at everybody within the organization at all
That
levels.
makes a lot of sense.
Everybody can do it.
That absolutely makes a lot of sense. So at this point, Andre, I think it would be great if we could maybe get a little snapshot of what the course actually looks like. I'm quite excited. I'm quite excited for this piece because you spent about a year in development, correct?
That is correct. Yes,
that is correct.
To see what the finished product looks like.
Yes. So I'm gonna signal to my producer to see if we can set up, if we can queue up just a sneak peek, right, Andre? Because we're not giving away everything today, but I think it's important. It's important that everybody who is watching gets an opportunity to see what the short course is all about. So remember, we're talking about the new Jamaica Data Protection Act short course being offered by Symptai Consulting. Not only new, but first of its kind here in Jamaica. And we're going to line up for you just a little sneak peek. And when the sneak peek is happening, Andre is going to be so gracious as to kind of, talk about what we're actually seeing on screen. Andre, while that's happening, have people actually started taking the course, and what's been the feedback so far?
Yes. So a number of people have actually completed the course. A couple of large organizations have also enrolled their entire staff complement onto the platform as well. And the feedback has been really positive. We've heard that the course is actually really simple and easy to digest. The language
Gotcha.
is relatable. The voiceover, makes the entire content engaging. People find the quizzes, the mini quizzes at the end of each module, fun because it's a way to test whether or not people are digesting and consuming and understanding the material. And then the final quiz at the end, the final assessment at the end, tests the overall knowledge as well. And I think participants particularly like the fact that they are given a completion certificate once they've
I did not
successfully.
know that. That is
Yes.
that is interesting. So at the end, after you've done a mini assessment, there's a certification that a certificate that's available to you.
That is correct, right? So, and a lot of people will choose to put this on LinkedIn just to say to the rest of the community that they have at
Bragging
least
rights.
attained an introductory knowledge in data privacy, right? Bragging rights, and you can use it however you see fit.
Great,
So those are
great.
some of the things that organizations have said. Those are some of the things that people who've taken the course have said.
Got it.
So at the beginning of the course, we just talk about the objectives, what it is that we want participants to walk away with. The first bit that I talked about around the organizational challenge is the knowledge gap. So we want to really break the course down so that people can understand. It's not illegalese in a way that people kind of get. Then it kind of moves into the importance of data privacy. Why is it important? Before the Facebooks and the Amazons and the Googles were having data challenges, we were talking about information and data and why it's important. We also talk about the remit of the act, and it talks about personal data and what that means. How is that defined, and what are some examples? It goes into some of those. There is a distinction in the act between personal data and sensitive personal data. So we talk a little bit about what that means in the context of today's operations and in a digital world, and we give some examples of those as well. All of that is done in an interactive way with voiceovers. Now, the first module, the first substantive module, is really around the rights of data subjects. So we
Right.
talk about each of the rights and what they mean for the data subjects and what they mean for the organization as well. Then it moves into talking about the provision of information, looking specifically at the Office of the Information Commissioner and some of the remit of that office. It also looks at the offenses and some of the fines attached to issues of non-compliance as well. So it goes into quite a bit of detail around that, so people really get the seriousness of this act. Talks about the functions of a data protection officer. So some organizations, in fact, the vast majority of organizations may need to appoint a DPO. So we talk about the functions of a data protection officer, who that person may need to be, or who that organization may need to be, and the role of that data protection officer. And as you can see, it's quite easy to register once you've
Yeah.
decided this is for you.
This looks good, Andre, and as you mentioned, that there are short video clips in there as well. There are mini quizzes. There's an assessment at the end. I mean, this is a course that really has a high production value attached to it. Just going through the course myself, I was really impressed with just how the content was laid out and how everything made sense. How you were able to take a really complex topic like the Jamaica Data Protection Act. That's a piece of legislation, and break it down into 5 modules that, left me with a greater sense of appreciation for everything. So, Andre, I have 2 important questions for you. Are you ready?
I am
First
ready.
of all, you're ready? What's the cost, and how do I register for the course?
So the cost, again, because we see this as being something that is important for organizations of all sizes and people within the organizations at all levels, we've made the cost quite affordable. So the cost is $50 per person, $50 per person.
Look at
And that
that.
gives access to the platform and all of the content on the platform. And in order to register, you just need to visit our website, www.symptai.com. Go to the training tab, and there you will find the Jamaica Data Protection Act short course. Or you can send an email to academy@symptai.com, and someone will be in touch with you.
So for those of you who are watching right now and you didn't have your pen and paper ready, if you look at the bottom of the screen, you will see the URL or the website address that you can go to get more information about the new Jamaica Data Protection Act short course being offered by Symptai. So you can go to symptai.com and go to our training pages, and then you will see our course there. And the registration process is quite easy. So Andre, is there anything that you want to, that we didn't get an opportunity to cover? I know what I forgot to ask you, Andre. So once I sign up for the course, right? How long do I have access for?
You will have access for 6 months, and you can choose to do the course as many times during that 6 month period as you wish. Sometimes people may just want to refresh, their knowledge. Sometimes they just may want to go back and look at specific sections of the course. You can do so. It's an on-demand, unlimited access for the 6 month window. And again, if you may have not done so well in the final assessment and you want to retake the assessment, you can also do so as many times as you want.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Well, Andre, thank you so much. We have come to the end of today's webinar. So just to recap a few things. So the new, first of its kind, Jamaica Data Protection Act short course is now available, everyone. It's available on the symptai.com website. If you go there and go to our training courses pages, you'll be able to access the course there. Or, as Andre mentioned, you can send us an email at academy@symptai.com. Well, I want to thank everybody who tuned in. I want to thank our guest today, Andre Palmer, Director of Research and Engagement here at Symptai.com. And importantly, I want to thank you for joining us today during our Lunchtime Live, where we discussed the new Jamaica Data Protection Act short course being offered by Symptai. Thank you very much, Andre, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
It's been a pleasure, Natasha. Thank you, too. Have a great day to yourself.
Great. Take care, everyone.